Sort of starting the second half of the story. Okay, the story is a very well-known story. It's a very important story. Obviously, we can't go over the whole story again. We spent the last 4 classes discussing the story, the details, and the questions and the answers, and Chazal taking it. Very, very briefly, David, as written simply in the story, David had a one-night affair with a married woman. That's the way you read it if you read it superficially. Okay. She then became pregnant, whilst the husband, one of David's generals, was out fighting for David in the war against Ammon. David called him back when he found out that she was pregnant. That way he would be able to cover up the pregnancy, because then it would be assumed to be the father's, Uriah, who was the father. That didn't work, because he refused to go home. David had him put to the front line and he was killed in battle. He then married this woman, again hoping that would cover up the story, because a few months later she would give birth to a baby, and it could very well be assumed that this had all happened after her husband died. Okay? Because Rabbi was very upset with David for doing this, and he sends in the prophet, and David basically passes his own sentence on himself after being given a mashal, a similar situation that he was given to judge by the prophet. I appreciate that all those who just joined the class are going to find this story very, very painfully difficult. But obviously we can't go over the whole thing. If you really want to know how we discussed it, then you can hear it online if you really want to. Dylan's got Sparks, and you can get the recordings from me if you want. But it would be really sad if you've got this negative opinion of David HaMelech based on what I just said. But there's no way we can continue the classes without knowing that's the story behind it. Okay? Chazal have a lot of nuances in the text which indicate that it shouldn't be understood so simply, although obviously David did something wrong, because there's a whole list of things, that punishments he's about to receive. And that's where we start. That's where you've joined. The second half of the story, what's going to happen now that David has accepted that what he did was a mistake, he accepts that it was an Aveira, and he's going to start the process of Teshuvah. And we're going to learn a lot of the things about Teshuvah and how you change, how even a sin like adultery can be rectified and atoned for, and nothing is that bad that a person can't do tshuva. That's the message we learn from this story. And several of the Tehillim, Psalms that we read, Tehillim 27 and 51, and several of the Tehillim are related to this story with David and Bathsheba. So again, the people in the story, David is the king, Bathsheba is the woman who is now his wife, amongst his other wives. He has many wives, right? Abigail and what's her name? Michal. He's got 6 wives, at least 6 wives, right? Probably over the course of the years he took more as well. There's 6 that we know of by name, and this is now another wife called Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of the former general of David called Uriah Hitti. Okay, and that's where we join in the story. Okay, so what page are we, Dylan?
25.
Page 25. Thank you. Shmuel base, chapter base. Okay, so we're halfway through the chapter. Pasuk Yud Gimel, I think it is. Yes, Pasuk Yud Gimel. Let's start from there. It's a good place to start. Vayomer David el Nosson. So Nosson was the name of it. You can write them if you want. That's why there's a space and to write you write your words, so you can take it back the same copy next time and remember the words. David said to Nosson, Chotasi la Hashem, I have sinned to God. Means he immediately accepts when the prophet pointed out to him. It wasn't so obvious that what he'd done was a sin, which is shocking in itself. Like, obviously this is a sin, right? It both involves murder, involves adultery, and therefore that's why it's imperative to read the story through the eyes of Chazal, because otherwise it makes no sense how David wouldn't realize that this was not and now he needs the prophet to tell him that adultery is a sin, that murder is a sin, like he doesn't know that on his own, right? If you read it the way we read it, then it's not so straightforward. It's very much nuanced. Okay, a lot of background, but that's okay. But he admits it, and then we said there's a samach, which means there's a break in the text, possibly indicating that there is wait, this is the author's telling you. Well, what else do you have to say, David? Do you have anything to excuse? Anything to mitigate your sin? And David doesn't say anything. He says nothing. And that's because David says, you're right, there's nothing I have nothing in my defense. I messed up big time. Doesn't try to get out of it like we saw in Shaul, when Shaul messed up, right? He says, yeah, but, yes. Shaul's got a lot of buts. David doesn't know buts. David says, I sinned, and that's it. Vayomer Nosan al David, Nosan, again, he's the prophet. He says to David, Gam Hashem he'evir chatoska. Also, God, means also just like corresponding to the fact you admitted to your sin, God will have passed over your sin. That doesn't mean he's forgiven it, right? But it's the sentence which you just passed on yourself of death will be, what's the word? Oh, there's a word for it. When a sentence is
reneged.
Better word. Muted, is that the word? When a sentence is reduced in its severity from death to okay? Hello. So what is it reduced to? Eloi tamus, you shall not die. So David's death is not imminent, even though David had passed that sentence by himself, because he had accepted that he had sinned. Also, Yudalad. Johnny. Betzalel, sorry. Okay. Johnny's a good guess for an Englishman. Okay. Betzalel. We don't have a copy here. I don't think we've got any more copies, I'm afraid. I think we've used all the copies. If you can share, that'll be good. Okay, Betzalel. Yeah. So, Ephes. Ephes means however. Yes, you will not die as a result of what you've done, but that doesn't mean you're going to be forgiven just like that. Right? And it's also very important to remember that David's action became public knowledge. Now, how do I know that? It's not so clear in the story that David doesn't actually say clearly it became public knowledge. The way I know is because Chazal seem to indicate that there's a Gemara in Shabbos that people used to tease King David about his actions. We started it a few times ago, in actually the same whole story. When David would walk into the Beis HaMedrash, right? David learned, just like we learned in the Beis HaMedrash, and people who knew about this story would say to David, King David, what's the halacha about a person who commits adultery? Like, what happens to him? And he would say, he gets killed. That's the death sentence for adultery. But, he said, he has a portion in the world to come. But a guy who embarrasses somebody else in public, he has no portion in the world to come.
Oh, what a response.
That was right? Okay, so David had the last word. Right? But what I want from that story is you see that it seems to be well known what David did. Not just because people read the story here. This book wasn't published at the time, right? People knew, like we said, there were the messengers involved, there's people involved, there's guards, there's there's people in the palace. It wasn't a secret. And then he died in battle, and then he married her, and a few months later there's a baby born, and so people put two and two together, and it became well known. And as a result of that was a tremendous chilul Hashem, meaning it was a desecration of God's name that someone of such stature, who had been appointed to be king by the prophet, by God himself, could stoop to doing something which is, like, in our eyes, despicable. Right? It could be. We can all justify it after we hear the words of Chazal, but the people around didn't know that. They didn't know that David had been asked to be tested. They didn't know that this woman was death to him from the 6 days of creation. They didn't know all the things that we discussed in the last class. Right? We know them, but they didn't know that. So they really saw this. They may not even have known that she was divorced, right? Which Chazal claim that she was divorced because soldiers divorced. Now, did all soldiers do it? Did only Uriah do it? Did some of David's soldiers do it? I don't know, but it could very well be that a lot of people didn't know about this. It could also be even that they did know. It's still despicable. They expected them to come back and get married, and David can't control himself. It's an awful story. So it created a tremendous chilul Hashem, it would seem, and that David needs. It has to be. The only way to rectify a chilul Hashem is when people see that people who do things wrong get punished. Now, he's not going to get punished by the Beis Din because there were no witnesses to what he did. So Beis Din can't do anything to him, but Hashem can. And when people see that David is being punished by God for what he's done, people say, see, even someone like King David doesn't get away with what he's done, and that gives people respect for God being fair. Okay, so that's why the justice has to be seen from God's part, and David suffers terribly from this story. Okay, all right. So I say, even if technically David didn't actually do anything, because it wasn't really adultery, she was divorced, it wasn't really murder because he was insubordinate, right? But he still created a Chilul Hashem, and that needs to be corrected. Yes?
Does it actually say someone that? Someone who embarrasses someone doesn't get a place?
That's still there. Yeah.
So David, it's because David's a prophet that he can take.
Well, yeah, if David says something, I presume that he knows what he's talking about.
Right, okay.
I mean, Chazal are quoting him, that this is, it's done in public.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. You not got a copy? You lost a copy?
I read it.
Okay. All right, let's continue. So, what's going to happen? So, the first thing that's going to happen is as follows: Ephes. However, that would mean, although Ephes in modern Hebrew means zero, right? Here it means but. Ki niatsta es oive Hashem, because you have, what's the word? How did we translate it last time? Angered, thank you. Because you angered God, although here it says the enemies of God, what it really means you've angered God, but it's such a despicable thing to talk about, we don't even want to say it, right? What's it really mean? Because you angered God, about this did, Gam habein hayilod lecha, also the son who is being born to you, or was born to you, because he's already had a child. Please come in and find a chair. You don't want to bring another chair? There's something in the corner there. Okay, the child who was born to you, because now she's already been in his house for a while, right? 6 or 7 months, and there's been a baby being born. He yamut, he shall die. Okay, I think that's what we got up to. So last time we discussed the philosophical problems, why did children die? But like I say, we all know that babies die sometimes, unfortunately, and we have to deal with that. But this isn't any more serious. The question is, why does David's son die? Not why does the son die? Why does David suffer? The answer is, this is part of David's punishment for his thing, to rectify the tremendous desecration of God's name, that people will see that David got punished, and the first thing that happens is the child dies. Okay, continue. Vayelech Nasan al Beisai. Nasan went to his house. He went home. He left the palace and went home. Vayigoy Hashem es hayeled, and God, it really means plagued. Right, or it can mean to it can also mean to bang. It means that he suffered. Okay, he's caught something, some disease, right.
Nasan.
Who was Nasan? Is the name of the prophet.
Yeah. Right.
No. Hashem did this. Hashem caused the child to be ill. That's what it means. Vayigof means he plagued him. Ashayolda, Aish Uriah, that the wife of Uriah had given birth. She wasn't the wife of Uriah anymore, it means the former wife of Uriah. Le David, that she had given birth to David. Vaye Aish. And that's a funny word. It looks like it means an onesh, but that's with an ayin. An onesh with an ayin means a punishment, so it doesn't mean that here, right? What does it mean? I would have no idea except from the context. It means he became ill. It means this kid looked like he's dying. Didn't die immediately, right? But he's seriously ill. Vayevakesh David es halakim, and David sought. The vakesh means to sought, to seek out God. Ba'ad hanam means he prayed for the welfare of this child, hoping that if he prays sincerely and goes through the processes of teshuvah and shows God how seriously he regrets his actions, and maybe something will work and he'll be forgiven and the child will live. Maybe. That's what it means. David begged. Well, it doesn't mean to beg, it means to seek. Well, it means to, like Bevakasha. Bevakasha means?
Please.
Bevakasha is like no, right?
Yeah, it means a request, right? We use it to mean the word please, but it doesn't really mean please. It means to request. Levakesh means to make a request. Vayevakesh David, he requested of God. Be'ad means on behalf of. Be'ad, on behalf of. The Na'ar. The Na'ar is the lad. Although he wasn't really a lad, was he? He was a baby. Right? But Na'ar usually describes someone that's older than that. This is a Tinok.
Right.
So I don't know what the nuance is here, but it's definitely something over here which is a bit strange.
But old enough to receive punishment?
Yeah, but he isn't, is he? It's indicating. Yeah, no. That just makes the question even worse. He's not old enough to receive punishment, is he? This is clearly, this is not a punishment for the baby. Baby's done nothing wrong. Like we said, doesn't say the baby suffered. He's just dying. Right? And David is the one who's being punished. Okay, I don't know. But anyway, it's a bit of a strange word to use in the context because he was a baby. Like Yotzam David Tzom. What does that mean? What's Tzom? Fast, very good. So David fasted. He fasted a fast. Uba, and he came. Velon, and he stayed overnight. That's really what lon means. Vishachav, outside, and lay down on the ground. He overnight, he didn't go to bed. He slept in his bedroom on the floor. That's what it means. That was his part of his tshuva process. To feel the pain, the suffering of the child, to feel the pain of God, and feel that what he's done was bad. Okay? And the elders of his house got up, alov, meaning next to him, lahakibay min haaretz, to lift him up from the ground. They didn't think this was the correct behavior for a king to be sleeping on the floor. So they tried to pick him up. So they came around him to try to get him up from the ground. V'lai ava, and he didn't want. Means he refused to accept their offer to help him up from the ground, and he stayed on the floor overnight. V'lai vara itam lechem, and he didn't. Now the word bara here doesn't mean to create. Well, it usually does. It just means to eat food. So he fasted, and he wanted to break his fast. He'd been fasting, he didn't want to break his fast. Now I don't know how long his fast lasted for, because the next part says, "Vayi bayom hashvi." It was on the 7th day. Vayamas hayeled, and the child died. Now I can't believe that David fasted for 7 days, because he would have died as well. Right? So I don't know what it means. Maybe it means the child was now 7 days old, and the child had become ill on day 6. So the fast would only last 1 day.
You have water? I don't know.
Yeah, you can fast for 7 days. You can go without water, but without food 7 days you can.
Yeah, okay. So maybe it means that he didn't eat bread, but he drank. Could be. It looks like it was 7 days. Not when it doesn't say when the child was 7 days old. It doesn't say it was on Shabbos. That's not the point. It means the 7th day of the fasting. Maybe he fasted every day. So what does it mean beforehand that he didn't eat bread? Maybe it didn't mean eat with them. That's what it means. At the end of the fast, he ate, but he ate on his own. Usually the king would eat with the whole family or all his ministers or whoever it was, But this day he relied bara itam lechem. He didn't break the fast with them. And each day for the next week he fasted consecutively for 7 days. Maybe that's the way to read it. Vayi bayom hashvi vayom asiyel, and the child died. Vayira'u. What does that mean?
Feared.
Very good. How do you know it's Vayira'u and not Vayiru? Because there's a little line under the Yud. Remember we discussed this once beforehand. If it means and they saw, it would be Vayiru. If it's they feared, it's Vayira'u. And there's a line under the Yud to tell you that the Shava on the Reish is a Shava na. Meaning it's a Shava you pronounce. There's 2 types of Shavas, right? There's a Shava, the 2 dots. Sometimes you hear it, sometimes you don't hear it. Okay, when you hear it, it's really a vowel. When you don't hear it, it's doing nothing. Right? What's it there for if you don't hear it? What's it called in Hebrew? Shva nach. A shava that you don't hear. So why is it there?
To differentiate between words of the definitions.
Why is it there at all? What's the point of having vowels that you can't hear?
Man, English does it all the time.
No, it doesn't. Oh yes, like you have an E at the end. There's a magic E to change another vowel.
Like the G.
Okay.
Oh, they're ghost.
What?
No,
that's because
pterodactyl.
that's because it comes from another language, wherein in that language there's a difference. I suppose English is a language made of 26 other languages.
No.
Right? Yeah, correct. But again, this is obviously purely not English. Why in Hebrew should there be a vowel that you don't hear? The answer is obvious. If you didn't have a vowel, then you'd think that the vowel was missing. Right?
Wait, how does it work?
That means if it didn't have any vowel at all, then you would think, well, the printers forgot to put the vowel in. Then you try to make up your own vowel. So the printers want you to know that we didn't miss out the vowel. There is no vowel here. That's why the Shava is to tell you there's no vowel. It's not meant to have a vowel here. So that's why they put in the Shava. And now you know that's the vowel that you don't sound. But there are other Shavas that you do sound. Like Vayiru'u, and they feared. Okay? Vayiru'u, and they feared. What did they fear? Avdei David, the servants of David feared. Lahagid lo, to tell him, Ki meis hayeled, that the child had died. They didn't want to tell him. They were scared to tell him. What's David going to do to himself if he finds out his child died? Ki amru, this is what they said. This is their logic of why they didn't want to tell him. I mean, they'd have to tell him eventually, right? But we'll have to work out a way to tell him, break the news very, very slowly to him because right. Ki amru, they said, Hine, behold, when the child was alive, from when he was alive, we spoke to him to eat and to get up from the floor. He wouldn't listen to us. Everything we tried to do to be more normal and not so extreme, he wouldn't listen to us. How will we say to him, that the child died, and he will do something really bad? Means they made what we call in Hebrew what's it called? A kal v'chomer. What's a kal v'chomer? If when the child was alive and he was just suffering, he was ill, David went to this extreme acts of suffering, self-inflicted suffering. All the more so, kal v'chomer, he's going to do this when he finds out the child died. Right? Now, excuse me. The reason why they thought this, because they thought that David was acting out of pain. He was acting as an expression of his pain, right? Therefore, they saw, well, if he's in pain, the child's suffering. Can you imagine what pain is going to be when he finds out the child died? It's even more painful, right? But that's not the way David reacts. What happened? David, and David saw. Ki avad of mislachashim. Mislachashim is from the word lachash. Lachash means whisper, quiet. Mislachashim means whispering. He saw that they were whispering. He could see they were talking quietly to themselves. Vayiven David, and David, vayiven from the word Yiven. Lavin from the word bina. He understood ki meis hayeled, that the child had died. He understood why they were whispering, and they didn't want to tell him the child had died. David said to his servants, Hameis hayeled. What does it mean?
The dead
The
child.
child.
Not the child. It's a
Dead the child?
which means
Child died.
Met hayeled.
No, he's asking to the servants.
he's asking a question, right? It doesn't mean
Oh.
hameis. It's not the dead, right? There's no dot in the mem, right? And the hay has a chat of patach underneath it, right? Look at the hay. So you know it's a question. It doesn't mean the dead. No, the hay doesn't mean the here. Hay is a question, hay. Did the child die? Meis hayeled, question mark. You with me? Right, hay is a question, hay. Vayomru, and they said, meis. Because there's no way to say yes in Hebrew. You can't say yes. Only in modern Hebrew you can say yes. You say ken. Right? It doesn't mean that in Hebrew. Hebrew doesn't really mean that.
So they just told him dead.
Yeah, that's how you say in Hebrew. When someone asks you, is this true? You say true. Did you do this? I did this. You can't say yes.
Is the child dead? Dead.
Right, that's how you say it in Hebrew. Yeah.
Nice.
I like that.
This is been
Modern Hebrew is basically a Hebrew form of European language. So since in European there's a way to say yes, so you have to invent a way to say yes in Hebrew. Just use the old ancient Hebrew form of doing that. Okay. The word ken really means correct. Like Yosef says, right? Yosef says to his brothers, you are spies. And they said, we're not spies, we are Kenim. What does Kenim mean? Doesn't mean
Correct.
yes men, right?
Honest
Doesn't mean
man.
that.
Honest
Right.
man.
It means people are straight. People
Yeah.
are right. So that's what it means. Okay. Vayomru, and they said, Mace, he has died. So what did David do when he heard his child had died? He didn't burst out crying and go back on the floor and bang his head on the floor. No. Vayakom David meharet. David got up from the ground where he'd been all this time. Vayuchat, and he had a shower. Liuchot, to bathe. Hayosech, and he. What did he do? He put oil. He oiled his skin. Means nice smelling oil. We would call it deodorant, right? Okay. Vayechalev simloisav, and he changed his clothes. Lechalef means to change, like a money changer. In Hebrew, it's called a. What's it called? A money changer. A chalfan. Chalfan ksafim. Is the guy who changes money. Simla is a garment. Right. In modern Hebrew, it means a dress. But similar tav means his clothes. Right? If you're wearing a toga, it looks like what we call today a dress, right? So they didn't wear trousers in those days. So men and women wore basically the same type of clothes. All right? Vayavoy Beis Hashem, and he came to the house of Hashem. Now the house of Hashem doesn't mean a temple, because there was no temple in the times of King David. It means the big tent that the ark was kept in Jerusalem. There was a tent, not the Mishkan. The Mishkan was in where was it?
Very drove past.
Not in Shiloh anymore. No, it's been destroyed. Shiloh many years. Shiloh, and then it moved to Noiv, Givon. It's now moved to Givon. The Mishkan is in Givon. Doesn't mean David went there. Very unlikely, because Givon is like 2-hour ride for David to get on his horse and ride to Givon.
Right.
Probably just means he went to the tent in which the ark was kept, like Ishtachu, and there he prostrated himself to God as a sign of submitting, that accepting God's punishment, or being grateful that God has commuted, that's the word, commuted his death sentence to the death of the child. So he came back home. Yishal, and he made a request. He said, please. And they placed for him bread, and he ate. So it means he stopped, he got dressed and looked decent, and he broke his fast. And his servant said to him, what is this thing? Asher osisa, that you have done. This is really strange behavior, the way they understand it. Right? If he's all his acting is a reaction to his pain, you'd think it'd be more painful the fact that his child has died. For the sake of the live child, Samta, you fast. Matef, you cried, although we didn't say that, but now you know he did, right? That word wasn't used. And when the child died, right? You see they're using the word yeled, which makes more sense than the word nar. Yeah, because it really is a yeled. Kamta, you got up, and you eat. It's really strange in their mind, David's behavior. So David explains, now going to explain his actions. Man, he said, Ba'od hayeled chai. Ba'od means whilst, as long as he was still.
What was that? Be'od?
Be'od, right? In the context it means whilst, or as long as. The word od really means more. It means so long as there was still the possibility of more life. Ba'od hayeled chai, samti, I fasted, va'evke, and I cried, ki amarti, because I said, mi yodea. That means, who knows? V'chanani.
Question. Because now I see this a lot in the Tanach. Does it mean what does it mean? Like the Yechanani, V'chanani.
Okay.
Like,
so that's called a Greek sieve. Means if you have a scroll, a Tanach has a scroll, it will be written Yechanani. Okay? That doesn't actually make sense in the context. So the tradition is to read it V'chanani.
Okay.
Now how do you know which it is? Because they put the vowels on the one, which is the way you're supposed to read it. So if you're reading this in public on Shabbos afternoon, Shabbos morning, you'll have to prepare this to make sure it's almost on every page of Tanakh, you'll see this. Right? In the Chumash, it's much more rare to have this thing. It's called Kri Kesiv. It means it's written one way, but the tradition to read it differently. Why that's so, I don't really know. You could guess, but that's the fact. Right?
Thank you.
So what does V'chanani means? And V'chanani Hashem, God will pardon me. You have that expression in modern Hebrew. Trump wants the president of Israel to pardon Bibi, right? And then he can get on doing, instead of being every Monday and Thursday having gone to court and interrupting his ability to function as a prime minister, because he's always in court. So Trump's trying to get, whatever. So that's called lechonen, which means to pardon someone for something he's done wrong. I think it's related to the word chinam, which means free. It means to get scot-free. Really, you did something, but instead of being brought to court or being punished for it, they let you off. Right? So that's the idea. So v'chanani Hashem, maybe God will let me off. That was the point. My fasting and my sleeping on the floor were not acts of expression of pain. They were acts of expression of teshuvah, of prayer. So that makes sense that so long as the child's alive, there's still something to pray for, there's still something to do teshuvah for. But once he's dead, it's too late. Right? So therefore that wasn't an expression of pain or sorrow, it was more a process of prayer and teshuvah. That's how he's explaining his actions. Mia Kiamati, because I said to myself, Mia there, who knows? V'chanani Hashem, maybe God will pardon me. V'chai hayeled, and the child will live. V'ata, and now, Mace, now the child died. Lama ze anitzam, why should I fast? What's the point? Ha'ucha lehashiva oid, that hey is also a question. Can I possibly bring him back more? Ha'ucha, ucha is from to be able. Lehashiva, to bring him back, like to do tshuva, to bring him back. Od, more. There's no possible, once you're dead, you're dead. There's no way to bring him back. Ani holech elav, I am going to him. Means the direction is that way. He's now in the grave, and the direction is me towards him. He's not coming my way, I'm going his way. But who lo yashuv elai, he's not going to come back to me once he's died, and therefore there's no point in crying over it anymore. Now if we just get on with life and do your best, live with the situation. But there's no point in crying over it. I mean, there is, but not in the sense of doing tshuva, right? Or not in the sense of doing tshuva because he's not going to come back. Good? All right. That's the first part of the story that the child Bathsheba became pregnant with dies. Vayinochem David es Bathsheba ishto. And David lenachem. What does that word mean? Anyone know? To comfort.
What is it?
Right? To comfort. Means she has awfully upset that her child has died, right? And David comforts her. Okay? Lenachem. We say nichub avilim means to go to comfort those who are mourners. Right? The word lenachem in its root doesn't really mean to comfort.
What does it mean in its root?
What it really means is to reconsider.
Ah.
If you look at the end of Parshas Bereshis, when God sees the world becoming corrupt, and it says, "Vayinochem Hashem al asher asa Adam." God reconsidered having made man. He said this was really a bad mistake because man really messed up, and therefore maybe it wasn't such a good idea to make man in the first place. And that's what it says, right? It says. Says on the Chumash, Vayinochem Hashem, and God reconsidered it. And then he says, yeah, but we've still got Noach, and he's good, and therefore we're not going to destroy the whole world. Right? So the word lenachem really means to reconsider. Right? So when you go to be menachem avel, to comfort, it doesn't really mean to comfort. What it really means is to speak to them, to reconsider the situation. It means that in their mind, their world has been shattered because of what's happened, and they can't carry on, and how can they face the future, right? And the point of going is not is to tell them, first of all, the person's in a better place, and life has got to continue, and you've got to put yourself together, and you've got to really look at the situation and not be so depressed and just taken in by grief and all sorts of stuff. Okay, so he's going to make his wife feel better, and they'll carry on their lives together. Vayinochem David es Bathsheba, and David, let's kind of comforted because that's how it's usually translated, right? Ishto, his wife, Vayovei eleha, and he came to her, Vayishkav ima, and he slept with her. Okay. Taylor Bain, and she gave birth to a son. Now, obviously, it didn't happen immediately, right? It just shows you that just because something takes 9 months to take place doesn't mean it has to be 5 verses about it. The next word, you understand, the next takes time, but I don't have to figure out what happened in between. Nothing happened in between, They ate cornflakes every morning for breakfast. It's that important in the story to know what happened in between. She became pregnant and she gave birth to a son. Okay. Vayikra, it says Vayikra, but then in brackets it says Vatikra. That's an interesting nuance. That means the text says Vayikra, but tradition says read it Vatikra. And the difference is Vayikra means and he called, Vatikra means and she called. So well, who gave him the name? Was it he, meaning David, or was the mother? So that's 2 versions of it, right? Does that mean there are 2 traditions? I have no idea. Anyway, the text says Vayikra, but with tradition is Vatikra. Es Shemai, and she called his name Shalaimah. Now this man is very famous, right? He's the fellow who becomes the next king. He's going to build the temple. He's King Solomon. And so he is the second child from this relationship with Bathsheba. Okay, Shalaimah. V'Hashem ahevo, and God loved him. Now it's unclear whether the author is writing the words God loved him, or is explaining why they called him Shlomo. They called him Shlomo because, does the Vav mean because God loved him? Now, how did they know God loved him? And God loves everybody, doesn't he? Right? But it means some special relationship, right? So it would seem that the prophet came to them and told them that this is a very, very special child and very special neshama, has amazing qualities, and God sees that he is able to do great things, and that's what it means. God loves him, right? So God given love is meaning that God had given them these qualities, and that's what its expression. Shlomo is from the word complete, right? Shalem.
Oh, no, peace.
Well, it's the
Peace
same
is
thing.
also
Same word. Peace is when everything's just right. There's nothing missing. Everything's perfectly fits nicely, right? So same word. Yeah. One of God's names is Shlomo. God is the source of peace and completeness. Yeah. All right. So because let's translate it that. Okay. Because God loved him. You know what I mean? It's hard to believe. Well, yeah. The author might be telling God loved him, but why would you want to know that as a fact now? Well, it's not relevant. God loved him. So what? But if it explains where you got his name from, that would make more sense. Because he's got this completeness from God. Vayishlach b'yad Nosan HaNavi, and he sent through the hand of the prophet Nosan. Who's he? He bringing God, right? Means you have to read it, and he sent this information. What did he send? He doesn't send a present. Doesn't say what he sent. You see? What did he send? Vayikra Shemai, and he called his name. So what did he send? It must mean he must have sent this information that God loves him.
Yeah.
And what that means, God sent the message. I want you to know that I love Shlomo, meaning God loves us, like I said, meaning that this Shlomo is really, really super special human being, and you should see to it that you relate to that. You educate him properly because he's got the tremendous qualities. Then you'll know to do it. And he called his name. Now, who's this? This is probably either Hashem, right, or it means David called him a new name, Yedidyah. Now, Yedidyah means a beloved one of God. Yedid, right? Like Yedid Nefesh, we used to think of Shalashudas, right? The third meal, friend, right? Friend of God. Ba'avur Hashem, because of God, means because God had told him that he loved and he was a friend of God, so they called him Yedidyah. So he's got two names, Shlomo, Yedidyah. Okay, I have a grandson who's got these two names. His name is Shlomo Yedidyah.
Nice.
Okay, so he has two names, Shlomo HaMelech. He may have more, but these at least two. Okay, next story. That pay indicates we've got to the end of the story. We're starting a whole new story. Now, in the meantime, if you remember, the Jewish army is fighting the Ammonites. We've forgotten that story, but that was what was going on. Now, I don't know if it's still carrying on after the time that Bathsheba was given birth, because that's only 9 months later. It might have still been carrying on. It's a bit unlikely, but probably what the story is saying. Now, we've got to the end of the story of Bathsheba. Let's get back to the story which we were talking about. We've got to get to the end of that story. Right? But we don't want to interrupt the whole story before the story with David Bathsheba has come to an end, and now she's given to birth one child that died. 9 months later, she gave to another child that lived, and he's called Shlomo. Okay, now, what was happening was the Jews were fighting the Ammonites. Why? Because the story goes back several chapters ago that the Ammonite king had died. His name was Nachash, and David had sent a delegation to comfort an official royal delegation to the king of Ammon to console him, to share their grief at the loss of his father. Right? The Ammonites suspected the Jewish people of spying on them. They said, "This is very strange. Doesn't the Torah say that you're not allowed to do this thing, have this positive relationship with the Ammonites?" David did it because the Ammonite king had saved one member of his family who'd escaped from the Moabites, and that's why David was grateful to them for doing this. But they suspected David of spying on them, and so they sent back the soldiers in disgrace. So they sent back their delegation in disgrace with their beards cut in half and their tunics also cut in half, right? And this was like a public what's the word? Humiliation. Thank you, for the official delegation of David, and David went out on the war back. So that's where this war comes from. And they originally had thousands of mercenaries from Syria to help them, the Ammonites, and they were destroyed and sent into run away. And now they're going to have to defend themselves. So Yoav attacked all the cities of Ammon, and now he's facing the capital city called Rabbah. Rabbah is the capital of Ammon, right? What today is Amman. That's where it is. That was the capital city of the people of Ammon. Okay, so Yoav with his army have surrounded them. During that war, the whole story about Sheba took place while Uriah was out fighting, and then he came back, and he got killed in battle. Okay, we're going back to the story. Vayilochem Yoav. Yoav was fighting, continuing to fight. Berabat b'nei Ammon. Rabat means the town called Rabbah. The Tov is because of the people of Ammon. Rabat, which is Rabbah of the people of Ammon. Vayilkod es ir hamelucha. Vayilkod means he captured. He captured the royal city. Now that doesn't really mean the capital. It means the royal part of the city. It seems to be quite a common thing that like in London, right? The Royal London, the city of London, is not very big, right? It's just got government offices and the palace, and that's the city of London, right? But millions of people live all outside. Or Edinburgh, right? Edinburgh's got Edinburgh Castle, right? On top of the big rock. It's got a wall all the way around, and all of the people live outside. It seems that Shushan is the same. There's Shushan Habira and Shushan. There's two places. Shushan is where everybody lives. Shushan Habira is where the king lives, where Haman lives, and where the ministers, where the parliament is. Okay, so the royal city was captured, but they haven't conquered the whole city. Yishlach Yoav Malachim el David. Yoav sent messengers. Malachim here means messengers to David. And he said, Nilchamti berabah. I have fought. Nilchamti, I have fought against Rabbah, which is the name of the capital. Gam lachatiti, also I have captured Esir Hamayim, the water city. Now a minute ago we called it the royal city. Now we're talking about the water city, means the water supply. Once you've captured the water supply, which makes sense of why the royal part of the city would be near the water, because they're the ones who want to make sure they've got the water for themselves, right? And the rest of the people will have whatever's left. Okay, but the supply of water was now in the hands of the Jewish army, and therefore the conquest was inevitable. Once you've got the water supply, then there's not much the enemy can do, because they just die of thirst if they don't surrender. So they're about to surrender, it says. V'ata. So now, Esuf means gather together.
Oh.
Right? It's not from the word sof, which means the end, right? The aleph here is a root letter. It doesn't mean I. Esof, gather. Es yesera'am, the rest of the people, means the rest of the soldiers, not the whole army were there. Okay, bring the rest of the army. You gather the rest of the army. V'chanei al ha'ir, and camp against the city. It means you should join our forces, because we haven't conquered them yet. We're still besieging the city. We've conquered part of the city. We've conquered the royal part, and join our troops. V'lachta, and capture it. Means capture the rest of the city, which has not yet been captured. Pen means
Face.
what? No, that's there. Yes, it does sometimes mean they're not here. Panim means a face, right? And pan is a singular of face. Pan. Pen means, come on, you say every day in the Shema, at least once, twice, 3 times. Pen yifteh levavchem.
Watch out.
Means in English you say lest.
Yes.
Lest. Means don't do as follows because you were worried that this will happen. Don't serve Avodah Zarah. Don't follow your hearts. Maybe you will serve Avodah Zarah. Okay. Pen means lest. Pen elkaid. If you don't come, you know what might happen? I might conquer the city, because that's what I'm in the process of doing. And then what will be so bad if Yoav conquers the city? Pen elkadani, lest I will conquer it. Esair the city, but Nikra Shemi Aleha, and my name will be called upon it. Means I will be given the attribute, the victory will be my name. This is the city that Yoav conquered. And Yoav being David's general, it's very interesting. Yoav is what's the word? Faithful, better word. Come on, Dylan, what's the better word? Loyal. That's the word. You see Yoav's loyalty, even though there were times when Yoav disobeyed David. Remember before Yoav killed Avner, and David cursed Yoav because he killed Avner. Yoav looks like is loyal to David. He says, look, why should I take the credit? Right, you're the king, you should give the credit. So therefore, at the final battle against Rabbah, it's inevitable that we're going to win now, right? You should be here to do this, to oversee, and then it'll be you can take the credit for the victory. Okay? You like him?
That's smart. Yeah,
Smart.
cool.
Even though he's a murderer, right? He murdered Avner, right?
Oh,
Whatever, but still.
everyone in the room in here is a murderer.
Okay. Right. Lest I will conquer the city, and it'll be called on my name. The city or the victory will be given to me. So that's what David does. He takes the advice. Vaye'esov David. So David gathered all the people, means all the rest of the people. Not all the people, most of them were with Yoav fighting against Rabbah. He put all the rest of the people. Vayelech Rabbosa, and he went to Rabbah. Okay, didn't go to Rabbos. He went to Rabbah. Right, but what's the hay at the end doing? Towards, right. He went to, but the Rabbah already has a hay at the end. So how do you put two hays at the end? You don't do that. When you want to put two hays, you have to make the first one into a tuf. You can't say Rabbah. No? So it becomes Rabbah. The tuf is only because it's towards. Vayilachem ba, and he fought against it. Vayil kedah, and he captured it. Okay. Another interesting aspect. That's it, finished. The Ammonites have been defeated. Right? They surrendered, and he's conquered the city, the capital city. He conquered the other cities beforehand. And now he's finally surrendered. All the Ammonites are under David's control. Okay. Vayikach es ateres malka. He took, ateres means, who went last week to Ateres Shlomo? You went there, right? What does it mean?
No.
You don't know. It's the name of a yeshiva in Rishon LeZion, which has 1,000 bachrim, an enormous gold-plated silver holy ark, right? They're in prison, right? So when you went in there and you saw what was the initial it's like royalty, right? It looks like a palace, right? The word Ateres means a crown. So it's Shlomo's crown. That's the name of the yeshiva. Ateret Shlomo. Also, it's named after someone called Shlomo, right? But that's when it's a crown in glory. So they took Ateret is a crown. Yeah, there are lots of words for a crown, correct? We can say Keter, we can say Zer, we can say Nezer. They all mean different types of crowns. Sometimes you have a crown that's just like this, and sometimes you have a big crown. Sometimes you have a crown that goes all the way around, but it's a little crown. There's different names for different types of crowns. Okay? So this is called an Ateret, which means a crown. Which type of crown, I don't know. Malcolm, that means?
Their king.
Their king. They took their king's crown, Me'al Rosha, from on top of his head, means they captured the king. What did they do to the king? I have no idea. Probably beheaded him, or I have no idea. Right, whatever. But they took his crown. Umishkala. That means? Mishkal.
He weighted it.
What did they do?
He put it on a weight.
Well, mishkala, its weight. Shekel. Shekel, the coin, actually with shekel means a weight, because the original coins were just weights of silver, right? And they put a number on it so you should know what it weighs. But raised coin is a weight of silver, a weight of gold. Mishkal is its weight. Mishkala, its weight, feminine, because it's Ateret, right? Kikar Zahav. It weighed 1 kikar of gold. Now this is seriously problematic, because if you Google what a kikar is, it'll tell you it's about 57 kilo. Right? And nobody can wear a crown of 57 kilo. I mean, you maybe a few minutes you can, right? But it's going to give you a serious headache if you try walking around with it. I believe actually the crown which the King Charles III was coronated in is also reasonably heavy, and you have to practice, and they're heavy, these things. They've got made of gold, they've got diamonds in it.
Oh, yeah.
But 57 kilo of gold on your head is
No.
it's a bit problematic.
Only like Ethiopian Jews can do that. They can carry like water things.
57
My teammate would do that. Yeah.
Not 57 liters.
I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm joking.
They would have maybe 20 liters on each side.
It's like carrying
Hold the stick.
2 suitcases on your head.
For context,
Even more.
57
Like 3
kilos
suitcases.
is around
A suitcase is a 20
150
kilo.
pounds.
This is like
3
what?
suitcases, yeah.
No, 57 kilos is around 115, 120 pounds.
I think
The
so.
Americans.
I think that's what I wrote in my notes. Can you check up what a kikar is? Can you see? Is there anyone know?
What?
A kikar.
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 It's a roundabout.
What does it weigh?
A roundabout. But you're Israeli, so you cannot translate.
It's either
A loaf of bread or a roundabout, correct?
Oh yeah, a square.
Yeah,
Yeah.
roundabout.
No, it probably is because a gold keycard probably was made
Bread.
that shape. It probably is because the golden keycard was made.
A keycard?
Keycard.
Hebrew?
Yeah.
How do you spell it then?
Kaf Reish.
I was gonna say roundabout.
No, golden keycard.
A golden keycard.
You know, for example, today gold is made of a certain shape, gold bars, right? So in those days they probably made gold like this. So that
3,000
became
shekels, 60, 77 pounds.
how many?
30 to 35
30,
kilos.
35.
35 kilos. Okay, it's not as much as I said. Okay.
That's a lot.
Yeah, okay. All right, so now the question is, how do you deal with it? So Gemara has several suggestions of how to deal with this. I mean, that their king used to wear this, right? One suggestion is, it didn't really weigh that much. It was worth that much. But how could it be worth that much and not weigh that much? The answer is, it had gems in it. Diamonds are worth more than gold. Right? So the diamonds in the crown made it worth a kikar of gold. It's not what it says. It says mishkala, its weight, kikar zahav, ve'even yakara, and precious stone. Even, stone, yakara, precious. So it sounds like it was a kikar in weight, and in addition, it had precious stones. Right? You can say, otherwise it doesn't read so well. But that's one suggestion. That's the way to read it because of this question. That rather to say that he carried that heavy, is that it actually was just worth that much. You'd have to read it, and it was worth that much, made of precious stones. Others suggest all sorts of interesting explanations. Either it hovered over his head. It means he sat on the throne, and it was placed so it was just touching, but didn't actually, his weight was not on his head. So it looked very impressive, and to the onlooker it looked like he had it on his head, but it actually was not supported by his head. Others say even more interesting ideas that it actually was held in place by a magnetic force field.
Wow.
A bit like the Japanese railway lines.
Oh, the
Right? They go,
magnets.
they travel 300 kilometers an hour because they're not actually touching the rails, but there's some sort of magnets which is forcing. So apparently,
Gold's not
some
ferrous,
suggest.
though.
What?
Gold's not ferrous.
Yes, but it probably had some type of layer around the bottom of it, which had an electric thing, and David had another one on his head, and the two forces.
But you still have the weight of it.
I don't know how these things work. I don't know. The weight's taken by the electric. I know someone once said this to me. It was not going to work because if you're carrying the other side of the ring,
Yeah,
which
you
is
do have the weight.
the force is still going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Whatever. Okay, that's because we haven't discovered yet how to do it, right?
Yeah.
But Shlomo HaMelech, David HaMelech knew how to do it. Whatever. That's another. Now there is another suggestion, which is very fascinating. The pagan god of Ammon was called Milcom, as Melech. You heard of Melech? Melech is an Avodah Zarah, a pagan deity, which one of the ways in which you initiate into its service is you take your oldest child and put him through the fire.
Wow.
And that's, some say he dies, some say he doesn't die. That's a bit of a discussion exactly what they did, but that's a famous type of thing that Torah forbids to do. Okay? And now that we know that was the deity of Ammon. So when it says Malcolm over here, it may not be the crown of their king, but it was the crown that was worn by their pagan Avodah Zarah. So he can carry 35 kilos, no problem, because it's an idol in any case. But then what do they do with it? Right? Then it says in the next pasuk, Vatehi al Rosh David, it was on David's head. Okay, so you still have to come onto the ideas that was some way of holding a position, just that David knew how to do that. You don't have to, the Ammonites know how to do that. This force field that David invented to keep his crown in place, the Ammonites didn't know how to do that. They just had it sitting on their pagan idol. But David could take this and put it on his head.
Good training.
Good training. What?
Wouldn't that be a problem wearing the crown of a...
Oh, beautiful question. Chazal asked this question. How can you take the crown of Avodah Zarah, put it on your head? Right? So if you say this was the king, not a problem. Right? The question, how did he wear it? You have to say. Also, I mean, all these, each way's got a problem with it. So the Chazal say that's a thing. We actually had this once beforehand. That when the Pelishtim were in the fields outside Yerushalayim fighting against David, it says they ran away and they left their gods behind, their idols, and David picked them up and took them away. Okay, that's what it says. So the pasuk says "Vayisa'um," which simply means he picked them up. The nosem. So some say that it doesn't mean that. It means to make a bonfire. Because we're going to learn in Rosh Hashanah, the word to make a bonfire is the same word in Hebrew. We talk about a masua. Masua, you heard that word? They light them on Yom Ha'atzmaut, right? So someone has the honor to light the masua, which means a bonfire. So the word noseh means in Hebrew to lift something up, but also means a bonfire. So when it says David took the idols and lifted them up, so sometimes it means he lifted them up and took them home. Others say it means and he put them in a bonfire. So if he put them in a bonfire, that's great, right? But if he picked them up, how do you explain that? There's an idea, the Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, that if a non-Jew does an act of what's the right word? Disregard is not what I'm trying to say. An act of bittul means he shows his disgust or disregard for it. Shunning, yeah, but it has to be more than that. Yeah, shunning just means ignoring. You have to do something to show that you don't believe in this, and it loses its status of an avodah zarah. If a Jew does it, doesn't help, because obviously Jews don't believe in this stuff, right? It has to be a goy has to do it. So apparently, like we have a Shabbos goy, right, who does things for us on Shabbos, David had a avodah zarah goy. A goy, one of his friends who was a goy, who would do this whenever David found something was from avodah zarah and he wanted to use it for himself. He would get the goy to chop away at it or spit at it or something like that, and then you could use it.
But with things like objects of faith, it's not just one guy's thing. It's like just because a Christian discards
whatever.
his cross,
Apparently that's enough. I think that's enough. Once some Christian comes along, now even though that guy doesn't believe in this stuff, because I can't believe David had a friend who believed in this stuff, right? So it was a guy who was technically a goy, right? He hadn't converted, but he was a friend of David's, and whenever David went, he said, "Ken, spit at this thing," right? He said, right? And then he said, "Oh, now we can use it." Get it?
Now I'll put your spit on my head.
So that's apparently that's and the guy was actually, we even have a name for this fellow called Itai Hagiti. Used to be a guy in Yeshiva called Itai, but he Itai means from what?
Ozzy, Itai.
Right, yeah. So Itai was one of David's generals, but he was a goy. He was from Gat. He was from the Pelishtim. He was a Pelishti, and he got to know David when David lived in Pelishtim. David lived in Pelishtim for a while.
Where
Goliath came from.
Yeah.
Correct. Goliath came from the same place. And but David befriended him, became friends, and wherever David went, he became one of David's generals, but he didn't want to convert to remain the goy. That's okay, right? And it was very useful for David to have this goy, avodah zarah goy. Okay? And that's what Chazal did. Is he took this crown, whatever he did, he spat at it or whatever, he chipped away at some of it, showing that this is nonsense, and then it's okay to use. And that's what David did. He took the crown and put it on his head. But that, again, you only have to say that if you say that with Malcolm here, it was from their pagan god called Melech. Okay? And the reason why you want to say that is to explain how they could have carried it on his head. And how did David put it on his head? Because David knew how to Kabbalistically make this thing float on top of his head. Whatever, or he knew things about Japanese magnetic
Railway
coils
station.
or whatever. I don't know how he did it, but he did it somehow or other. Or else you have to say that it didn't have any of that, and then just say it was just a very precious stone. But it doesn't fit so well into the text. So that's a bit of an insight into this crown. Let's carry on. We got time to carry on? No, we're going over time.
A few lines.
No, but this is a whole controversial. We can't stop it. But just finish the passage. Shlal ha'ir, and the booty from the city, hotzi, he took out, harbe ma'od, very, very much. Besides the regular booty, that was loads, tons and tons of booty. Besides that, he wore this very, very precious crown, which he now wore on his head. It could be he wore it only for a few minutes at the beginning of the opening session of Parliament or something like that. It doesn't have to be everywhere he went, he wore this heavy thing on his head. Okay, the next passage is a very controversial passage, so we'll do that for tomorrow.
I'm reading that. That seems fun.
It's worse than a bunch of